Okay. Good morning. Good morning to all of you.
Good morning, sir.
Good
Good
morning,
morning,
sir.
sir.
Good
So
morning,
have
sir.
Good
you?
morning,
Good
sir.
morning, sir.
Yes. Yes. So have you tried those problems regarding those? What about your midterm exam? Is it all right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And I think we have already started or finished that part that is chain reaction. And I already given you some problems. Have you solved those? Derive those,
Yes,
I
sir.
mean,
Yes, sir.
composition of acetylide and other problems. Okay, if you have not tried, then that we'll discuss later on. But today we start a new part that is enzyme catalysis reaction. Okay, that we'll discuss. So I'll share this screen. Okay. Okay. So today we'll discuss this part that is enzyme catalysis. I think most of you are. Uh, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes, sir. You are
Yes,
Yes,
properly
sir.
sir.
audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So actually, enzyme, that is it depends on the whether it is biological or say in general artificially made for a chemical reaction. When we use an enzyme, can you guess what is the purpose of using enzyme? Do you have any idea?
Sir, enzyme increases the rate of a reaction by lowering or decreasing the activation energy barrier.
Yes, you are right. So the purpose of use of enzyme in a chemical reaction is to provide an alternative reaction path with lower activation energy. Right. So that means even if you do not use an enzyme, the reaction may probably start, but it would require huge amount of activation energy. That means the reaction may not be normally carried out at an optimum temperature, right? So if we want to reduce the uh, barrier height, that is activation energy barrier, then we have to use some external agency. And in this regard, enzyme has been used popularly. And enzymes, they can not be used arbitrarily for any reaction because for each reaction, whether it is biological or say other reactions, it we have to use enzyme that for a particular reaction. That means enzymes are highly specific. Say a enzyme which is efficient to induce a chemical reaction, particular chemical reaction, it may not be used or efficient for other reactions. So that means enzymes are highly specific with regard to its reactivity or action. And another important aspect is that enzymes, they how they participate in a chemical reaction. Obviously, they take part, that means in such a way that there are several theories are there how they participate, but the normal case we generally know that enzymes, they participate actively in a chemical reaction, but itself is regenerated at the end of the reactions. Then what is the role of a catalyst or enzyme? Right. So enzyme basically uh, lowers not only the forward activation energy, it also lowers the backward activation energy. So that means if we use an enzyme, then it will speed up or increases the rate of forward reaction as well as that of backward reactions. So that means the barrier height of the forward and backward reactions both are reduced, which indicates that if we use an enzyme, it will help the reaction to attain its equilibrium state rapidly. Because if both forward and backward reactions are accelerated, then the chemical reaction itself will attain its equilibrium state rather rapidly. And that is the vital role of a catalyst. But even if you use the catalyst, the another reaction channel or the path that one can expect if you could not use the catalyst, then that alternative path will still exist. That means if you use a catalyst, there are two alternative channels or path for chemical transformation from reactant to product. One is the higher energy barrier path without the aid of catalytic, and another is alternative path that is created due to the presence of a catalyst. Naturally, kinetically, one can expect that the reactant will transform chemically transform to products via the lower activation path. Right. And since a catalyst accelerates both the forward and backward reaction rates, that means now the next question sometimes people ask, does it change the magnitude of equilibrium constant? What should be the answer? Can you guess? Does a
No, sir.
catalyst or enzyme?
The catalyst cannot affect the equilibrium constant of the reaction.
Yes, right. Because K1 and K2, K1 or the Kf means forward rate constant and the backward rate constant in the catalytic reactions or enzyme reactions, the rate constants will be changed with respect to the uncatalyzed path, but the ratio will remain constant, right? Because it accelerates both the forward and backward reaction rates to an equal extent. So you are right that equilibrium constant depends only on temperature, right? And it does not depend whether you use a catalyst or enzyme in a chemical reactions. So that is important. So let us consider the idea of and the reaction mechanism normally proposed for enzyme catalysis. Right. So let us denote E as an enzyme and S for substrate. Now, the normal sequence of reactions with this aid of a catalyst can be represented like this. First step, that is enzyme and substrate, they react to produce an intermediate species labeled as ES. As shown it here, it is 1:1 ratio. They will combine and to form an uh, intermediate labeled as ES. And this formation of ES, this step is a reversible one. That is, depending on the nature of the substrate and the enzyme, it has a specific magnitude of this or relative magnitudes of these rate constants K1 and K. That's one. Second step is this intermediate species decomposes to produce the desired product, maybe one or more than one product, with the release of the enzyme itself. Right. Sometimes physical property of a enzyme may change, but its chemical identity will not be changed at the end of the reaction. Now we normally use steady state approximation to these intermediate species, that is ES so produced for this intermediate species. As you know, how to write down the corresponding accumulation or the generation of this species. And we know that at a particular, at the reaction progress, this concentration of ES will not change. And this is the steady state approximation. And under this condition, one can write this equation, this expression, that is, as you know, that is ES is produced in the first step with activity constant K1 and decomposes via two channels. One is the reversible decomposition, and so it is written like this: rate is subtracted, and second thing is that in the subsequent step, ES has been consumed to produce the product. So that's why the relative sign of the rate expressions is familiar to you. Now there is another important approximations, that is, let us consider E0 indicates what? Total or the initial concentration of enzyme that you have taken. And this must be equal to ES, means the formation of that adduct species intermediate, ES, concentration of ES, and E. E is the free enzyme. E denotes here free enzyme, right? So this is not prime. Okay. So this is the two part. That means at any instant, if you see that free concentration of some of the concentration of free enzyme and that of enzyme which forms the adduct, and this concentration of these two species must be equal to the total concentration of enzyme, right? As per the law of mass actions, that is, mass will not remain will change, or even at any point of the reactions. Okay, so that's why we can put it here. If concentration, if you look at this steady state expression, there we replace E by E0 minus ES in the steady state equation that is here. Uh, in equation 1, we put the expression of E and simplify it. Okay, and we find an expression of ES, that is the concentration of intermediate species is coming out to this. Right. Okay. Now this equation can be right hand side can be written in this alternative form, that is K is 0. That is, if you divide both the numerator and the denominator by the concentration of substrate species, then it appears to be like that. Now, interestingly, this quantity that I have written Km, that is K inverse 1 plus K2 by K1, this factored together constitute what we call Michaelis constant. Michaelis constant, right? Km. It is denoted by K subscript M. Okay. K. And this is the expression of the intermediate species in terms of substrate concentration and initial concentration of enzyme, and K is constant at a particular time. Now let us find what is the rate of formation of the product. Naturally, product is produced in the second step, right? So we can write down the corresponding rate equation dp dt equal to 2 es. And this es we just replace from the expressions we just obtained from the steady state approximations. Just we put the expression of es here and we get an explicit expression of the rate differential rate equation like, like this. Now we can approximate this expression. That means we can have a simplification of these expressions to have a more physical insight regarding the kinetics of enzyme reagent. Okay. Suppose if AS is large, if you take the concentration of substrate to be large extent, then what would happen? Naturally, this ratio, that is the second term in the denominator, can be separately ignored, right? And we are left with an expressions like this, which is very interesting. And what is the conclusion we can draw right now? Suppose E0, it is the initial concentration of enzyme, so it is a constant itself. So physically, what does it mean? If you take the substrate concentration in large extent, then what should be the order of the reaction? Uh, can you guess? Can you guess what should be the order of
Zero.
the reaction?
Sir, zeroth order.
Yes, you are right. So for a given amount of enzyme, this is the zeroth order with respect to the substrate, right? So this is interesting. Now, if you keep, if you take the substrate concentration in small extent, then what would happen? If you take substrate concentration in small extent, then we can write this rate equation, uh, this equation. So if you take S in small concentration, then Km by delta A, Km by the substrate concentration S, this magnitude will be significantly larger and we can simply ignore unity with respect to this quantity. And naturally, we can write Ko2 is 0 S by Km. So when you keep substrate concentration is small, then we get the rate equation, right? And here it is clear that for a given amount of enzyme, this reaction is because E0 is constant for a given amount of enzyme and K2, Km, these are constants. So you see that the reaction is first order with respect to substrate, right? With respect to substrate concentrations. So this is very important, right? So if you keep substrates concentration small, then we can get this first order reaction. Okay. Now, in general, this is the uh, without approximation. This is the exact rate equation because if you look at the if you do not divide the substrate concentration using with numerator and denominator, then you get it. And if you divide it, then okay, uh, we can write like this, no problem. So we don't, we just write, we don't approximate, but we write this equation like this here. Say, okay, so we can alternative way. I think you can easily check that it can be written, the overall rate equation can be written like this, right? Without any approximation, that is general, without any modification, that is special cases whether substrate concentration is taken small or large. We are not considering that aspect, but it is a general outcome of the rate equation, okay, overall rate equation, right? Now, this equation, let us consider what happens. at the very beginning of the reactions, right? What is the rate? What is the observed rate? When an enzyme catalytic reaction is just, if it starts just now, then what will happen? That we denoted by a reaction rate which has a subscript 0 indicates this is the initial rate of an enzyme aided reaction, right? And it can be, and this subscript that we attaches to all these subscript concentrations and enzyme like this. So basically R0 equal to the right hand side expression, whatever I've written, it indicates the initial rate, initial rate of the reactions. So basically this is the uh, this is the initial rate of the reaction. Okay, and this expression or this rate, particularly this rate, is popularly known as Michaelis Menten law. Michaelis Michaelis Menten, Menten, Michaelis Menten law. Right? These are the two scientists. So in the name, this rate constant is written, expressed like that. This is known as Michaelis Menten law. Okay. Now, the physical significance of this equation is that what is the limiting value of this initial rate if the substrate concentration is taken in large extent, right? If the initial concentration, if uh, the substrate is taken in large extent, right? Then this expression becomes equal to what? Because the 0 is large, so with respect to Km, if we ignore the Km, then naturally this S0 term will cancel out and we are left with again a constant term, that is product of two constant term K2 and the initial concentration of the enzyme. And this we label as R max, that is the maximum reaction rate. So this is an interesting observation that the limiting value of the initial rate reaches its highest value only at this particular condition when the substrate concentration is taken large extent. Okay. And naturally, this equation R0 can be written in compact form if we use this product K2, if you replace this product, that is K2 is 0, which is nothing but the maximum rate, then this expression, say in equation, if we label it as reaction 2, then equation 2 can be written like this. Let it be reaction labeled as 2. So you just put this expression, that is Ka0 equal to R max in this expression. Okay. Then we get this expression. Now this equation can be rewritten in this alternative form, and the purpose of this writing will be clear in our subsequent discussion. To get some physical significance and to calculate some meaningful quantities related to this enzyme catalysis, we uh, write down this equation in this form. That is reciprocal of this both sides. If we take like this, then we can write 1 by R0, uh, 1 by R max, right, plus Km by R max by S. Can we write like this? If you have any doubt, please raise your question. Can we write like this or not? It is actually R max, which is R max. Okay. So this equation, which is written in this form, we call Lenoir-Bark equation. Lineweaver, Lenoir-Bark, Burk, Bark equation. Right. And why we have written it in this form? What is the physical significance of this Lenoir uh, Bark equation? That will be clear to you. Now, if you plot 1 by R0 versus 1 by S0, then what should be the nature of plot? Can you get like this? We are plotting 1 by R0 versus 1 by S0, right? That is, if you take different initial substrate concentrations, and for that, if you plot the corresponding reciprocal of the initial rates, then we will get a straight line like this: y equal to mx plus c, with the slope is 1 upon r max, and the slope would be equal to simply the ratio of km to r max. Can we write like this? Or is there any doubt? Please, if you have any question or any doubt, hello.
Understood, sir.
Okay,
Understood.
okay, thank you. So r max equal to, since k2 is 0, then if you know the initial amount of E0, right, knowing the value of E0, then you can easily calculate K2, because from the intercept of this car, which is equal to 1 upon R max, so reciprocal of intercept will give you the R max. And once you know the R max, then from this expression, you can easily calculate the rate constant of the second step. That is, from this you can guess the rate of the reaction step 2. Now this K2 is popularly known as turnover number of the enzyme. This is very important. K2 is popularly known as turnover number of the enzyme, and it has a significant physical. It bears physical significance like this. What is that? The number of molecules. What is turnover number? It is the number of molecules. It denotes the number of molecules of substrate converted or transformed in unit time by one molecule of enzyme. So naturally, you can expect that what is the physical significance of K2? If the magnitude of K2 is large, that means the enzyme is highly efficient to transform this chemical this transformation. This is a highly efficient enzyme is highly efficient to decompose a particular substrate, right? Because one molecule of enzyme converts how many number of substrate molecules, that is indicated by this quantity, which is popularly known as Sorry, turnover number of enzymes. And typically, the K2 values normally lies within the range 10 to the power 2 to 10 to the power 3 per second, or 10 to the power 5 to 10 to the power 6 per second, right? Okay. Now, if you have any doubts at this stage, please let me clarify. Okay.
Sir, can you explain the previous equation that you uh,
Which one?
more up, sir? More up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This equation
What's the
number
problem?
three. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Number three equation.
You just
Michaelis
put,
Menten law, like this.
yes, this one, equation
Yes, sir.
2.
Yes, sir.
How you just, what is the expression of R? Do you have, can we write the expression of R like this?
Yes, sir.
And if we add the R is the reaction rate at any time, this simply R. But whenever we are labeling R0, right, it indicates that the reaction rate, initial reaction rate, that is at the very beginning of the reaction, when the substrate concentration, if you label is 0, right? That time, what is the reaction rate? Just simply in this equation, we put the substrate concentration subscript 0 to indicates this substrate concentration at the very beginning of the reactions. And that time, what is the rate of reaction? That reaction rate is particularly called Michaelis-Menten law.
Okay, sir.
It is nothing but the rate law at a particular condition. What is that condition? At the very beginning or the initial rate that ability. Now, naturally, from this expression, we should write if substrate concentration is taken in large extent, naturally, we can write these expressions. Is it all right?
Yes, sir. The concentration tends to infinite.
Means large extent. If you take the substrate concentration in large extent, then we can approximate this expression like this. And that is R max. This we label as maximum rate of reaction.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Understood, sir.
Okay. Actually, this is the fate of the reactions. If you plot R0 versus substrate concentrations, then initially it will increase like this, and then it will be parallel to the substrate concentration. And since the reaction rate increases and achieves a constant value when substrate concentration is in large extent increases, so this there will be no more changes, and that's why it is the maximum rate, right? Maximum initial rate. And initially it seems to be a straight line. So that's why the slope of this curve would be equal to K2 is 0 by Km, right? So this is the actual plot. Why R max, limiting value of R0 when substrate concentration is taken in large extent? And if you plot that equation R0 versus S0, then we get a shape of the curve like this. Okay. Now we'll consider another important aspect, that is activity of enzyme. This is very important. Okay, you just first plot this and then I'll discuss the other one. Okay. Okay, okay. Now we'll another important aspect, that is what is the activity of enzyme. That is another important aspect that we can discuss. Suppose you are carrying out a enzyme catalytic reaction in a, say, aqueous medium, right? Then E denotes the enzyme, and this enzyme captures if one hydrogen ion, then it becomes EH, or it may combines with two hydrogen ions to form EH2. That I have shown it here. Okay. So a particular enzyme may exist in an aqueous solution, aqueous phase, in two different forms, either EH, E, or EH2. These are the possible variants of a particular enzyme in aqueous medium, right? Now the question is, which which particular enzyme in which form, whether it is in bare form, that is E, or it is a singly protonated form EH, or a doubly protonated form EH2, which will be more efficient. To understand that, we may plot like this. That is, the enzyme activity, if we plot versus this pH, right, of the medium. Because if you increase the magnitude of, if you increase the pH of a solution,
Sir,
then
how we
naturally
get this plot, sir?
we are plotting enzyme activity versus pH. Enzyme activity means you can guess from which quantity you should plot. Can you
Sir,
guess?
we are changing the pH
K2.
of the system and we are
Yes, yes.
measuring the enzyme
K2,
activity.
K2, K2, turnover number. Suppose if you plot versus pH of the medium. Naturally, from this expression, you see if you increase the hydrogen ion concentration in the medium, that is lower pH, then it will form H2. But at lower pH, it will form higher pH, higher hydrogen ion concentration means lower pH, and at higher pH means in alkaline medium, EH will be produced, and still higher alkaline medium, E will be mainly the component in the equilibrium. So that means if you plot a curve like this, one can see that this peak corresponds to this particular configuration. That is, enzyme in this conformation, in this structure, that is, when singly protonated, it will be more efficient compared to either bare enzyme, that is free enzyme E or EH2. So this is one example, right? That is, EH and S will form EHS, and then it will subsequently become. So in this case, this is the enzyme catalytic reaction. These are not. These intermediate species will not produce the desired product, right? So we have to pick up this intermediate species, the enzyme, which will exist in the solution, that will favor this particular reaction. Okay, this is a typical example, right? That means how one can speculate the nature of the enzyme or how is efficient in a particular solution phase. Okay, so that's all. Okay, so this is the enzyme catalytic reactions, the kinetics that we have particularly discussed. Now, an important questions generally popularly you can find that why higher order reactions normally n is greater than or equal to 3 in the gas phase are rare, right? How we can explain that? In the gas phase, suppose A, B and C, the reactant species, three reactants, they react to produce three products, P1, P2 and P3, right? Let A, C, B, that is product 3, labeled as product 3 is the major target or the major product. That is the desired product, right? Now the question is, what is the probability to get this desired product? How the molecules they will orient or collide in particular direction. So that is important. Can you get? Suppose your desired product is A, C, B, linear. It may be in this triangular form also. Now the question is, this particular orientation, that is if the molecules approach like this, first phase, it will be not leading to the desired product or expected product, A, C, B. But the second approach, how the molecules approach in the second way, that is A and B are approaching to C, then this linear product ACB will be more favorable. And there is another alternative path, that is the reactants, if they align and mutually align like this and interact, right? Then one can expect this cyclic product ACB. So the obvious conclusion is that these sorts of product out of these three reactant species A, B, C is not favorable at all, because there are several types or modes of collisions and several other products or byproducts whatever may be produced or side products will be produced, right? So basically spatial orientation is important factor and rate of this particular collision. Not all these collision will lead to you desired product, right? So orientation is one important factor. Another important factor is the activation energy barrier. That means how the molecules exchange, mutually exchange or share their internal energy. That is also very important. Okay.
Sir,
Another
what is the second point written? Rate of this?
particular collision.
Okay, okay.
Now another important chemical reactions that you are familiar with, although it is not a chain reaction, as we already discussed. You see how HI molecules decomposes to produce H2 and I2. If you look at the nature of collision or approaching to HI molecules, in the first case, if you look at then the chemical transformation that will which particular this particular orientation will lead to the product HI and IE like this lateral collision like this. So naturally, this particular mode of polite collision between two HI molecules will not give you the decomposed products H2 and I2. But let us consider second possible way. Okay, this is also not the desired orientation of collision. Now third one, if the two HI molecules align like this, then naturally HI bonds will be ruptured and two new bonds HH and II will be formed in this close proximity, and we can get the desired product. So there may be several other approaches or types of collisions. I have not mentioned it here. So naturally, out of the several possible orientation and collision or collisional orientation, only a particular orientation will lead to the desired product H2 and I2. Okay. So that's why even the rate of this reaction in the gas phase is very small, because this particular reaction, thermal decomposition, is not a chain reaction that I already discussed. So thermal decompositions of this molecule HI, although the reaction seems to be more favorable compared to HBr, but the overall rate of this reaction is very small because of this case. Okay, different types of orientation factor. Okay, so that's all. Okay.
Hello, sir. Can I ask a thing?
Any question you can ask.
Sir, is there any practical for physical chemistry?
Actually, practical theory part we can dictate, but experimental part, I think, how will you carry out? Because I think this semester you may not be allowed to come to the institute.
Yes, sir. But there's a subject chemistry laboratory CH1171. Sir, we need to make laboratory notes like this to upload.
Yes, yes. I will discuss all these laboratory notes.
Oh, okay, sir.
We will discuss, right? No problem. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Sir, when college open for first year?
Well, I think in the next year, next semester, you may probably come to our institute, provided this situation persists. That means this normalcy maintained. Then, of course, we expect you to in our campus.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Okay.